in recovery mode. We still have people that are living in cottages. We still have people that do not have jobs. We still have people that are homeless because of Katrina. But I feel like people on other parts of the world think that we're fine because we're the U.S. and the richest country, but we're not, because it was so massive. I don't think the government or anyone else knew how to handle it. The reason why I'm here in Copenhagen to say that we must take the lead on this climate change initiative. We must pull back on its gas emissions, and we must do our part to show that we are willing to do our part to stop this, because what we're doing is killing each other. We're killing people in the U.S. and we're killing people in developing countries. And we have to collectively come together and say, let's not do this anymore to ourselves. Let's just stop it. Let's just stop it.
Even though this is the stupid show and we do have a pretty low sense of humour, I think we do have to always remember what this is about. This is about our actions and our inactions causing the death of people right now and also people in the future. And the more people who deny it, the more the process gets slowed up, the more people who are going to die. It's as simple as that. I mean, you've been following this for a long time. How much, how far, all of this denial, how many years have we lost basically when we could have been acting, but we weren't? We were having stupid.
More than 20 years. George Bush the senior, George Bush the first, promised in 1988 to counteract the greenhouse effect with the White House effect. So he said in 1988 he was going to make it stop. We've been pretty much going backwards ever since.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
And that's a lot of death. It's a lot of people who've already died, and a lot more people because of those.
And climate change is like a good savings account. It collects interest.
Exactly.
So every time you put a bit of CO2 in the bank, it accumulates, and we've made it a lot worse.
Those were the key years when we really should have.
This year is the key year.
Well, this is the end of the time when we could act.
Well, every year, exactly. Every year. I mean, don't let's panic, or let's panic, but let's do something.
Let's do something. Great link to our 10-10 campaign. I don't know if you've heard about it. But in the UK, we kicked off this campaign called 10-10, which is about cutting 10% of emissions next year, i.e. in 2010, which, as we all know, is the kind of emission cuts we should be making.
Every year.
Every year, exactly, and not some distant year 2050 or some nonsense like this, like all these countries are talking about. Yes. We've got to start straight away, and it's got to be reasonably big, like 10%. So would you like to sign up to cut your emissions 10%?
That will be hard. Yes, I do. Yeah, I want to sign up, but in order to sign up, I have to have help from my whole family.
Yep.
Because I sold my car and I stopped eating meat, which were the easiest things for me to do, and those are big numbers.
Yep.
And
how's your house insulation and your boiler?
The house insulation is kind of okay, and the boiler is kind of okay, but the lights are on all the damn time, and the computers and my kids keep borrowing cars from other people. I mean,
so why don't you commit your whole family?
I'll commit the whole family.
This, by the way, is an aeroplane, 747, recycled into these tags.
Genuinely.
Yeah. So there you go. There's your bit of an aeroplane.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with cutting your emissions 10%.
I'll need all the help I can get.
Okay. Cheers, Richard.
Thanks
so much for coming. See you later. We're now going to go to another video. I'm sorry that we keep going to videos. It's because George Monbiot couldn't get into this conference because he wasn't deemed worthy. But let's go and see a bit more from George, and he's going to talk to us. So even though we do like to take the piss of the skeptics, the fact is they are doing quite well and getting quite a lot of traction. Why the hell is that?
I think it's possibly because the scientific evidence has been hardening up so much, and that as people see just how serious this is, they go into denial. And I think we respond to climate change in a very similar way to the way we respond to death, that we simply don't want to know about it. And the first response to anything which is really uncomfortable is to deny that it's happening.
But also perhaps the news that it's us that's causing it might be, adding to that, because it's not just like bad news like you've got cancer. It's like you've got cancer and you're causing it and you're killing everybody else. I mean, that's pretty hard to take, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really challenging to a lot of people's worldview, because it challenges the whole basis on which our growth-based civilization has been built. The idea that the more you create and the more you produce and the more you consume, the more progress is taking place. And actually this suggests that progress might be going the other way. It might be a matter of reducing our consumption, of reducing our production, and of reversing economic growth. And people find that very challenging and very disturbing indeed. In fact, it's very noticeable that the polls show pretty consistently that it's older people who are most inclined to reject the science of climate change. And I wonder if that's because it's most challenging to their worldview. They've gone through their whole lives thinking they were doing a very good thing by making money and by working for exactly and working for industries which were probably quite polluting industries, because they kind of were in those days. And suddenly here we are, these younger whippersnappers, telling them that they've been doing a bad thing all this time, and understandably they hate that message.
Because also there's these moral codes are in opposition now, aren't they? Because, you know, everybody's been told that, you know, you, for example, fly to your sister's wedding in Sydney. That's a morally correct thing to do. And suddenly now we're told that everything we used to believe and everything we did for the good, we weren't doing it in a bad way, is now bad and is causing harm to all these people. It's a very hard thing to take, isn't it?
It's very disorienting, and climate change actually requires a whole new set of moral codes which we didn't have to consider before. The most innocent seeming actions actually can have very grave consequences for people whom we've never met, who we never intended to harm, who might live on the other side of the world. Turning on your kettle helps to flood Bangladesh. It seems ridiculous, but it's true.
Yeah. And also I think there's something in the fact that, you know, the older generation, they did their best and they were trying to, you know, provide a safety and, you know, a good life for their children, a better life, and then to find out that actually, you know, everything they've done is going to provide a worse life for the coming generations. It's so hard to take, you can see, I can understand.
Well, they've got plenty of good excuses for not knowing and not being aware at the time when they were working and producing that pollution. The excuses are now run dry, and we can't rely on former ignorance to prevent action from being taken today.
And on the climate march through Copenhagen the other day, it was very interesting to see how many old people really were struggling to walk through that march. So let's not dismiss the whole older generation.
No, I don't by any means. And some of the best campaigners of all are people who are post-retirement age. But it's just a general trend. And what the polls show pretty clearly is that climate skepticism or climate change denial, which I think is a more accurate term, is more heavily concentrated towards the older end of the spectrum.
If you think about something like, say, smoking, where perfectly intelligent people, doctors, you know, will smoke and give themselves a 50-50 chance of dying from smoking, isn't that is surely all about denying our own mortality, not really believing that we as individuals are going to die? Put that, times that by 6.5 billion people, all in denial about their own death, and then all in denial about, I mean, it's hopeless, isn't it?
Well, there's a very interesting new paper by a woman called Janice L. Dickinson, where she actually directly connects this issue of the denial of death with the denial of climate change, and draws on the remarkable work of the cultural anthropologist Ernest Becker, who died in the mid-70s, who wrote a book called The Denial of Death. And he showed how we create immortality projects to try to persuade ourselves that we're not really going to die.
Films, like books, you know, that kind of thing.
Exactly that kind of thing. Yes, that sort of irrational behaviour that certain people engage in, and that the likes of us, of course, are far above. But,
absolutely not.
And so that something lives on.
How are we going? How are rational people ever going to get around the skeptics' problem, really?
Well,
I mean, we've used rational arguments for 30 years, haven't we? And that didn't convince them.
We're not going to convince everyone, and we just had to accept that. But at the moment, luckily, the people who really count seem to be holding the line. Governments have got their scientific advisors, and the scientific advisors are telling them very clearly what the science says. And we'll just have to hope that people can be carried along with this to some extent. It'll always make the job more difficult, the intensity and the extent of this denial, but it doesn't make it impossible. We just have to keep on keeping on.
So obviously calling them, calling it denial, calling them deniers, is linking them very clearly to the Holocaust deniers. Do you think that's a fair comparison?
Well, it's not actually linking them to Holocaust deniers. That's not my intention. I call them deniers because I can't think of a better word. And in fact, I've asked people repeatedly at public meetings, if you don't like the word denier, come up with a better word, and no one has been able to do so. many of these people call themselves skeptics, but